friends. It is so good to see you coming at you live from my cell phone on this Wednesday. So thank you to Jeb and everybody for your patience. I am so sorry about that. But again, it's a live show and we do the best we can with what we've got, with what's in front of us. So happy Wednesday. So excited to see you today. And so excited that we are going to have such an amazing, robust conversation with somebody that I have been following on LinkedIn for quite some time. And if I've been following her for quite some time, my guess is that you may also be following her, or you might have seen several of her posts because they go viral. I would say pretty much like every other week. She has these fire posts that gain so much traction and have so much interaction. So if you have seen Madeline Mann come up on your LinkedIn feed, today is your lucky day because we have her joining us today to talk about how to take control of your career, ace the storytelling when it comes to interviews, whether those are interviews for jobs or volunteer positions or promotions or awards and honors. I'm excited to have her join me today. So from wherever you are, please raise your coffee cup and help me welcome Madeline to the show.
Hello, good to be here, Kim.
Thanks for sticking with me with all the technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think everyone, the group is fired up. Maybe we need to do this more often of just kind of getting the vibe. Like people are doing the wave in the audience already. It's great.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, like I said, I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time, so I'm super excited about our talk today because I just feel like I feel like I know you. I don't know if you have that with people that you follow online for a long time. I'm like, no, she's my friend. Like it's her birthday this week. Like she's turning 30. Like I know this about you, but we've never actually sat down to a proper coffee. So thank you for your time, especially on your birthday week.
Heck yes, I know. So I'm feeling good. It's a whole new chapter.
It's a whole new chapter. Well, I'm super curious to get into what you've been doing this past chapter because holy moly, you've accomplished a whole lot before the age of 30, especially when I feel like it takes some people decades and decades to learn interview skills or how to perfect their resume. It seems like you've learned that in a very short amount of time. How is that possible?
So I would say that is a little bit true, but also at the same time, I mean, I remember by the time I had graduated college, I think I had already had 14 jobs in my life. Like I've always been like grinding and really working towards things. And I was then able to determine what my life's career was at age 21. So I think that it's interesting because I think if you kind of look back to it, it's not only just quantity of experience, but also quality. Like the opportunities I got early in my career were so above what I actually believed I could do that the quality of that experience, of the intensity of what I did, really helped me to grow very quickly.
Well, and I feel like it's also a case where because you did so much, you probably learned so much. And what I think is really helpful is you see whether it's the consulting clients that you work with or some of your master classes and workshop, you've probably seen more resumes, more sort of interview questions that stump people than most people have by age 30.
Yes. And to be honest, I'm not sick of it. Like that's why I built an entire business about it. I could talk about your LinkedIn profile and your resume all day. My clients are always so surprised that I like hop on these calls. I'm just as hyped on like a YouTube video as I am on a private call. And it's just because I don't know. There's something about the human behavior dynamic of it all and basically taking someone's story and finding the glory in it. It gets me excited every day. I cannot explain it.
Well, I'm curious that, when was the first time you actually jumped on LinkedIn and really realized the power of the platform?
Okay, so I know you and I are extremely aligned and like LinkedIn is the best. Like I don't think that we need to really debate. It's the best platform. The organic reach is insane. Your ability to reach people is incredible. And so when was it that I realized it? Well, so I started my thought leadership journey on YouTube. Shout out to anyone who's seen in my YouTube videos. And I thought, okay, where do I post these videos to tell people to watch them? Well, LinkedIn makes sense because they're all about the job search and career. And I started fiddling around with different post styles and what was kind of garnering more attention versus not. And YouTube is a slow grind, but I think like as I was approaching 10,000 YouTube subscribers, putting so much effort into that, I was approaching 60,000 LinkedIn subscribers or whatnot, right? And it just kind of kept going up from there. Of course, now it's grown so much more since then. But it was like when I compared those two channels, I was like, oh my gosh, like LinkedIn really helps you to reach so many people. And that's when it clicked for me of, okay, I'm going to spend a lot more time on LinkedIn because this is where people are ready to invest in themselves. They're ready to make moves in their career. And the platform just really helps you to not just reach the people who like follow you, but their connections and those connections.
It's such a good point. And I also feel like it's an undeveloped place for really networking in a meaningful way. I know that I've met some amazing people via LinkedIn. I'm sure you have as well, and everybody who's joining. So obviously we all know each other from LinkedIn. So there's very meaningful connections there. I will say, I'm sure that we are going to be dropping some fire advice, tips, tactics. Don't worry about writing them all down. If you go to sendmenotes.com, we will send them to you along with, I'm sure you'll reference like books and workshops and masterclasses. So I don't want anyone to like panic. Don't panic. It's okay. You can go to Send Me Notes and we'll send you on the notes. So don't everyone freak out about that. But I'm curious, when it comes to LinkedIn, and I know one of the things that you are such a proponent for is storytelling as a really memorable way to kind of paint yourself as this character, somebody that stands out in somebody's mind, as opposed to, oh, that's the copywriting girl, or, that's the design guy. So I'm curious for you, when it comes to somebody's LinkedIn profile, what are some storytelling tips or some storytelling hacks that you always are working with or trying to get your clients to do?
So I would say if we're telling the story on the profile, one of the things that I think people often, if they're going into story mode, they go into Wikipedia page mode where they tell everything about their past. And like I said, I mean, I've had so many jobs at this point that if I was to give you my Wikipedia page, you probably wouldn't even know how to do this intro to this session because you'd be like, okay, so she did this, but then she was kind of doing that. And we all of us have these winding roads of a story. But what's important is to pick out those milestones that help to make this really great through line so that you don't need to tell everyone all of, the side project you did or that, career path that you did for a couple years but wasn't the right thing. Really just telling them the core aspects that kind of leads that's kind of the really cool part about this all is that you're in control of your own story. Every job interview you go into is essentially they're evaluating you on essentially only the things you tell them. That is amazing. Like no one else is contributing any information. So you can fully craft your story. So I think that's the issue is people will go full Wikipedia page, say all of these things made me who I am. When really you need to take the position of your audience of what are these major milestones that will help to make sense of where I'm going next.
And then I'm curious, I got a DM that is sort of along those lines. So I want to make sure I touch on it, but I hope I'm saying the name right. Omri, hopefully I'm saying it right. Omri kind of wrote in, okay, let's say I sort of have my, whether it's a Wikipedia page or story that I've been telling on LinkedIn, and maybe it's this one job or like this one role, like I've been in sales, but now it's sort of, whether you want to call it the great resignation or the great reshuffle, I don't want to be in sales anymore. Like I kind of realized that I want to go be, I don't know, a fitness instructor, or, you really want to switch careers. Like you started in one and now you want to switch to the other, but you're worried that the story and sort of your past jobs and everything that you've been telling on LinkedIn doesn't necessarily match up to this new area that you want to get into. What would you suggest that somebody add in or modify if they do really want to kind of do a 180 from what they've been doing?
Yes. Okay. Let's use that example. So salesperson, now you want to be a personal trainer. So one of the things to know is the first step is to make sure that you are confident about that next step. And the reason why I say that is because people will sometimes make their LinkedIn profile, okay, personal trainer, but maybe I'm also a nutritionist, but maybe I'm also going to still be open to sales roles just in case I can't get those roles. And then it's very confusing. So what you need to do is you need to say, boom, this is the direction I'm moving in. Now, you don't just wake up one morning and everything becomes suddenly clear. You need to be talking to all of these people who are personal trainers. What does your life look like? How are you getting clients? What are the worst days you're having? And if you're down for all of the difficulties of that career, then you're probably going to be pretty confident about this next step. So make sure you're 100% confident. And it's amazing how just having that clarity, suddenly then the LinkedIn profile starts to fall into place because you're all in, right? You're not still holding on to that sales experience. So then what I would see your headline in your about section to talk about is I would throw out the sales stuff and I would say something like, when I was 21 years old, I competed in my first bodybuilding competition, and it was the first time in my life where I realized so much pride in my health and my body. And I thought, why can't other people have that same passion for life? And so I have focused the last 7 years on really understanding the physiological aspects of building a strong, healthy body, the nutritional aspect. And I am now working, looking to work with folks on building their healthy future. So you're now let's just completely reposition you, because this has been a passion of yours for a while. And, maybe there's certain things that you did in your sales role that is interesting of, I have the ability to connect with people and really understand their needs, right? Whatever it is, but focus on the new chapter.
Well, it looks like, okay, we have a follow-up question. What if what I did before doesn't fit into relevant experience? I'll take a stab, and then I'm curious what your thoughts are. I kind of would piggyback on what you just said, that I think there is always relevant experience if you reposition.
Yes.
So, we're all solving problems day to day. We're all working with other people. We're all collaborating. We are marketing ourselves. We are selling our ideas into our boss or our colleague or our husband or our wife. So we are all sort of multifaceted. So my answer to this would be, but I'm curious what yours is, would be, I think we can always reposition things that you've done. You just might have to look a little more creatively.
Yeah, exactly. If we're going to make a complete pivot into being a personal trainer, notice I just was like, all right, that's what I'm going to focus on. That's what I'm branding myself as. And yeah, you could find those through lines. There's definitely through lines. But also, you helping your cousin lose 40 pounds, he didn't pay you for that, but that was real results. That was real work. That was real value you just contribute to the world. So don't disregard those things that you've done. If you're about to be a personal trainer, I bet you just naturally are helping those in your life with their fitness goals, with their health goals. And so that's the thing that a lot of us either have aspects of our past experience that you can grab onto, and have aspects of our past just kind of extraneous outside of work things that we do that are very applicable to what we're doing next.
100%. And I'm curious how can you come across as excited about a position without feeling too salesy? Like you're trying to sell yourself. And it could be something in a corporate job settings, you're trying to be that, or maybe if you're a coach or a freelancer of some sort, and you're trying to sell a client on your proposal, or selling a client on joining your masterclass.
So one of the best things to do is simply tell stories. So instead of me telling you, Kim, I am the best career coach. I help people so much. I get lots of people jobs, and I'm just really good at what I do. I don't think you or anyone would just believe me because I say that, right? Instead, if I told you story after story of how I take people who've been rejected by their top choice company, I help them reposition what they're doing, and then they come out with a 40K salary increase, a car, and a sign-on bonus. Those are the types of things where okay, Madeline knows what the heck she's doing. And that's the same thing with all this is when you tell stories to show your character, it helps people to picture what it's like to work with you. And so just making sure that even if you're asked questions like, how do you handle stressful situations? I could just word vomit a bunch of things about how I react to stressful situations, or I could tell a story of a recent stressful situation. You could say, "Oh wow, that's clever. Like she's got her head on straight." And that is what's most persuasive.
Well, and I feel like obviously storytelling is something that is really a natural gift of yours, and you do it all the time in your LinkedIn posts and your LinkedIn videos. But what if someone who's joining us today is sort of like, gosh, she's such a natural at it, and like I'm not a natural at it? Do you have some sort of baby steps for maybe somebody who's feeling intimidated or doesn't know where to start on how they can start to flex that storytelling muscle a little bit more?
So I call it the I just syndrome, which I with so many of the my clients that I work with, they say, "Oh, Madeline, you've done all this cool stuff, but I just helped on that project. I didn't lead it. I just that was just, my wife's business that I contributed to. I wasn't actually paid for that work. I just, you know, came in at the last 2 weeks on that project, whatever it is, right?" And it's like, no, you created real value, real results. And so I think kind of stepping out of that I just syndrome is really important. And there's a lot of different ways I do this. I have like this formula called the glory formula, where you're able to see what the company's looking for and work your way backwards for the right stories. But here's another tip, and I think some of you might be familiar with this, which is you've heard of the STAR method, right? Of answering interview questions. Okay, okay. So you may have heard of STAR. Put STAR in the chat if you've heard of it. I'm not going to teach you STAR. It's like it's 4 steps to tell a story, which if you've ever heard a story, it's a beginning, middle, and end. It's not 4 steps. So I do CAR or PAR, which is essentially challenge, action, result. So that is how you want to tell stories. And so often, and this is the biggest thing that people focus on, is like the challenge is that they'll start to set up what was the situation that they were handling. The action, what did they do to try to solve that? And then the result, what were the results of what they did? And I'll tell you that so often in the interview, people will focus so much on the challenge. They'll give way too much details about the context. They'll give a little bit of detail of the action they took, and they'll either forget to talk about the results, or they'll just say, and things worked out, or something like that. When really it should be kind of flipped. It should be more of, tell us the challenge, but only the most important details. So just to get us on the same page. The action is actually very interesting for me to see your character, and then really dive in a bit deeper of what are the results? Like, how can I tangibly see that this had like a strong impression? So I think just making sure that you're balancing the way you're answering these questions and telling your stories is going to make all the difference.
And then when you're specifically telling your story on LinkedIn, because I think that your LinkedIn posts are absolutely amazing, do you have a sort of secret sauce that you do, or are you just sort of constantly trying out new methods? I know we talk a lot on here that no one has figured out the algorithm. The algorithm is like a mystery man. And if somebody tells you they do have it figured out, they're probably lying, because it's always changing and it never stays the same. So I'm curious how you approach storytelling when dynamics like the algorithm are always changing.
Yes. So I think the piece that people often, so it's both the algorithm and the psychology of the way that you're presented information on LinkedIn. I'll elaborate on that. So on LinkedIn, no one hops onto LinkedIn and necessarily says, I want to read Kim's post right now, or I want to read Madeline's post. It's just served up to them, and we have a couple of seconds to catch their attention, which is different than people who are Googling for blog posts or YouTube videos. So I think what often people don't realize is it's not just like hacking the algorithm, but hacking the psychology of how to make sure that we're capturing that attention, keeping it, and converting it, and then adding additional value. And so, yes, I do have very specific posting templates I follow every single time. I call them kind of like my 5 viral triggers posts. I do have like a full masterclass. I linked it on my LinkedIn profile. It's in my feature section. I think it's actually the third thing where I like walk through my whole LinkedIn strategy. But it took me from kind of getting like a few thousand views on a post, maybe a few hundred views, to me having like 3,000 connections and reaching 50,000 people, because you're able to, of course, there's like certain algorithm things that you and I both are like, okay, like I won't put that in my post or whatnot. But there's just a lot of psychological things that send your post to the moon that still would have the same content as another post, but you just kind of reconfigure it.
Right. You just kind of like change it around a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, what are your thoughts? Obviously, a pushback that I get all the time, so I'm curious if you get this pushback as well, is that, well, Kim, when you own your own business or when you're an entrepreneur, it's much easier for you to post. But I work in a corporate setting. And so therefore, it's either harder for me to post, or I'm not sure what I'm allowed to write or not allowed to write. I'm curious if you've come across this sort of pushback or friction with the clients that you work with as well.
Yes. So I would say that for posting, there's certain, especially if you're working in a larger company, they will have restrictions about what you can do and what you can represent. Fortunately, my career has been, I've been in mostly like growth stage companies. And so they've just been thrilled that I am promoting myself and people are hearing about the business through me. I've always been like both promotional myself and of where I'm working. And I've just had amazing jobs where I'll stick things into posts where I'm like, I love working here. And then when anyone at that company needs help boosting a job post, like I comment on it and it's just like, oh, we got so many more candidates. So it's a very, symbiotic relationship of me creating my own personal brand and then using it to help the businesses I've worked for. So I think if you're kind of in this mode of giving, they can see it as a lot more of a positive thing of like, oh, like she is driving, energy towards growing our team. And I would always hire people so quickly when I was on teams because I have this network of wonderful professionals. But you're right. I think it is a conversation to have if you are working at a company that's a little bit, they have a big profile. They have very specific things about the way you can talk about them. And that does pose a challenge. And you will have to speak, or read the handbook on social media etiquette and all that.
Oh, absolutely. And, you kind of referenced how you've had, these numerous jobs, and people have always been excited that you've joined the jobs, not only with your skills, but with your sort of personal brand attached to it. And I'm wondering if we can dig into that a little bit, because my guess is when you've had all these different jobs, you've also negotiated probably a lot more, again, than most people have if they've only had like a handful of jobs. I'm curious at every point when you've had to negotiate, whether it's a salary or paid time off or your fees or pricing, how you've approached those negotiations, and if you have any sort of tactics that you find have worked really well.
Oh, absolutely. So not only is it just me having lots of jobs, but I work in HR, right? Like I come from an HR background. So I actually was the person extending hundreds, even thousands of job offers. So here's the thing. The number one thing that people get wrong, Kim, is they make the negotiation emotional. They say, Kim, I really need 80K. I just, got a new condo. I have payments I need to make. I want to live close to the beach. Like, and you would be, maybe some of you are surprised, but that is the number one negotiation tactic I've ever heard. Like it always goes personal. I need this. I need this number. And what happens there is it doesn't really make sense for the other side. It doesn't really talk about your value and your skill sets, and it doesn't help them to go back to whoever is setting the salary ranges and vouch for you. You're giving them nothing. And also, you kind of put yourself in a pickle where if you say, I need this number and we're not able to give it to you, like you feel kind of weird, like, all right, I'll still take your lower number, right? So you're like, how do I even get around this? So what you need to do, Kim, is you need to take the emotion out. So you say, based on my research and the other companies who I've been interviewing with, the range for this type of role is about X to Y. Does that match with your range? And, and just keeping it very non-emotional of like, hey, yeah. So, and you get, maybe I get a salary or I get a promotion. It's like, hey, what the number I was really targeting for this salary increase was X. Is there any way to make up the difference? It's completely non-emotional. And sometimes it's just a matter of an ask. And to not, and this is something that's been challenging for me in my career, is to not start walking it back. So instead of saying, oh, can we make up the difference? But it's okay if not. I mean, I understand there's a lot of budget restrictions and I can be flexible and there's other ways we can make this up. Like, no, silence is golden.
Silence is so key. And I'm wondering, in your days of HR, I think that sometimes what people also forget is they think, well, I negotiated once, and so the negotiation is over. So like I got a job at, wherever, Deloitte, or even if you're an entrepreneur, I got a client at, X per month. And then they think like that's it. And what I'm always curious of is something that I've kind of always done is, whether it's every quarter or every 6 months or every year, whatever cadence you want to put into it, is like the negotiation is an ongoing thing. Like I don't wait for, when I was in corporates, like I don't wait for HR to contact me and say like, we're up for your yearly, meeting. It was like, no, I was like, I'm making a meeting with you. Like I'm renegotiating this with you. So I'm curious, like, what's your cadence, or maybe what one that you recommend to clients for how often those renegotiations should take place?
I love that you're bringing this up because I don't think it's something that a lot of people think about. I have a group coaching program to help people land the job. But one of my strategies I work with folks is, in that negotiation for the job offer, we essentially set up the promotion. Like they are already seeing this person as such a high value candidate that they already seeing that this person is kind of like on the up and up. And so even the conversations you have at the beginning are going to set up that promotion. I had a client who she went from education to technology industry, which is a big jump. And she ended up doubling her salary. And she had such high confidence after I'd worked with her on the salary stuff that we ended up basically setting it up so that she was going to get a review within, I think, 3 or 4 months. And we ended up getting her like tens of thousands of dollars more and a promotion within that amount of time. And it's interesting, like even when I've joined jobs, like based on my negotiation, they know the number I'm at. So even if I don't get that number, they're still targeting that number later. So when is the right time? Well, I think really making sure that you are probing to talk about your future goals, really ask for your employer or your manager to say, what is the path to a promotion? What is the path to me getting to this next step? What are some of the things you want to see from me? And sometimes they'll give it to you. Sometimes they'll say, well, like if you can grow in like X, Y, and Z way, like that is going to be money for the company. And of course, if it's money for the company, it's very easy to rationalize why it's money for you. For example, like I joined a company and their recruiting team was, they were just basically relying on external recruiters. And while I came in as like human resources, I started like learning how to source, like finding these candidates myself. And like executive recruiters, they take like sometimes 20, 25% of that person's annual salary. So I was saving the company hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you think it was very easy for me in a few months to say, hey, I deserve a raise? Of course, because that value was just very clearly demonstrated.
Well, and I'm curious. So one book that I really loved, I mean, I know it's a little overplayed, but I still love it. I really enjoy that Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I think it's a great book, but I'm curious for you if there's any podcasts or books or maybe a newsletter that you really like that you feel like talks about negotiation, or maybe it's just something that you've kind of always referenced back every so often.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, Never Split the Difference is just such a perfect book. I would say I don't know if this is directly about negotiation, but I do love the book by Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human. Basically, he talks about how I think we all have this weird icky feeling about sales. And I think you even have this on your website about like, let's not sell, like let's, we won't be salesy, like we're just going to really show our value. And I think that's what sales is like being valuable to others and like helping them to come to the right conclusion. And so he talks about how everything in our world is sales, like us getting buy-in for a project, us like, helping to convince the rest of our team that we should hire this person, helping to convince people that they should hire us. All these different things. And even, for us to vouch for ourselves for a salary increase, that is sales. And so there's a lot of ways that he talks about where we can do it in a way that feels really authentic and is helpful to everyone, but it's a skill set that is different than you being good at your job. Like, I think that's the number one thing everyone needs to realize is being good at climbing the ladder, being good at landing jobs is actually a completely different skill set than you being talented in your role.
100%. And I also think, when we're talking about showing our value, or selling ourselves, if you will, part of that is also staying top of mind. And I'm curious, as Jen sort of referenced earlier, like, how can you do that without feeling naggy or without feeling like, oh man, here I am again trying to get that promotion, or here I am again, like trying to raise my fees with my clients. Like, how do you do it in a way that I guess keeps your integrity that, hey, I'm bringing a lot of value to this company, or I'm bringing a lot of value to this freelancing job or project or team. And I want to show my point without feeling like I'm kind of being that naggy Nelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say that I think that the majority of follow-ups are truly helpful. Like, I wouldn't think of a follow-up as a nag. I would see it as a helpful timer that you are setting. I would say a lot of these people who are maybe not getting back to you, it's probably because they have a million other things they're thinking about. So you following up, they are probably thinking, oh my gosh, oh, Kim's getting back to me. Oh my gosh, thank goodness. They're feeling embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot, and so you're actually being helpful. I just, as long there is obviously, and I have, if you go to madelinemann.com on the front page, I have follow-up email templates that are chef's kiss, just like super effective, because you do want to follow up in the right way. You don't want to be rude, but people appreciate the follow-up. And what is also important there is that you do it in a way that you assume they want to hear from you, and you assume they're not ignoring you. I'll give you an example. So what too many people do is they say, hey, Kim, I don't know if you got my last 3 emails. It's okay. You must be really busy, but I was just wondering, like, are we on for today's live? No. Instead, what I would email you is I'd say, hey, Kim, so excited for today's live. We still on, looking forward to it. And you know what that does? You know what the second version of that email does? It makes you not feel like crap. It makes you feel like Madeline likes me, because the other one is guilting the person. It's basically saying you suck at responding. And that person sitting on the other end being like, yes, I suck at responding. Now I'm actually going to avoid this person more because I hate confrontation. So always keep it positive.
I will also say, one of the rules that I always live by when it comes to following up with people is that I know we've all talked about like the love languages and stuff like that. I know there is a work version of that book. I forgot what 4 work languages or something like that. But anyways, one thing that I've also learned, whether it's working with clients or through my marketing agency, is not everybody connects the same way. So I might follow up with a client 2-3 times via email before I realize, oh my gosh, he never looks at his email. Like, I got to call him. Like, yeah. He's a phone guy. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I have mixed emotions. I do it, but I have mixed emotions. What I've also found with some of my clients through the marketing agency is that they're like not about the emails, and they're not necessarily about the phone calls, but they are all about the texts, which again, I think starts to get into like, I'm texting a client that feels unprofessional, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's how they communicate. That's their love language. So I kind of got to talk to them in their love language. And one thing that I always do with that is I say, okay, if texting is their thing or phone calls is their thing, I take it upon myself to write really detailed notes. Like, okay, I'm going to write down everything we talked about in the text message, or I'm going to write down everything we talked about on the conference call. And I will actually send those via email, even if they don't open it, even if they don't read it. If God forbid down the line something goes wrong, like there's a mix up on the project or something happens, I know like I can always reference that email. Like per our notes, per our call
Mhm.
3 weeks ago, you said you were going to do X and I said I was going to do Y. So like, because if not, if you do have a phone call, there's no written follow-up of who said they were going to do what. So I feel like the mix-ups there, at least in my experience, can get a little bit sticky.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a really clever way of then, yeah, if your mode is email and that's how you're staying organized, okay, we can still do the call, but I'm gonna do the email too, so that when I look back 2 months from now, I'm not gonna go through my phone logs and remember when it was. Like, no, I'm gonna go to that. Yeah, I think that's really excellent, and I think that it's so funny. Like people will go to my like try to DM me on LinkedIn. DMing me on LinkedIn is the worst idea ever. It is such a jungle in there. It's such an absolute mess. And so you're right. Like it's if I don't get back to you on DM on LinkedIn, it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's not because I don't love you and think you're the best person. It's because your message was just immediately buried by 50 others. And I'm just like, it's just not even worth it to dive in there. So I think we need to stop taking things so personally and start, yeah, just reading between the lines, reading the vibes, like understanding what people's communication patterns are, and then play to those.
Well, and I also think what's good about the follow-up email that kind of plays to your earlier point about salaries and pricing and negotiation is you can always reference that. So like if I'm working with a client and I sign a contract with them in, let's call it January of 2019, I have a little thing on the bottom that says, hey, this quote is good for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, if you haven't signed this, we have to look at this again. We got to revisit.
Yeah.
Or in those initial contracts, I'll say, okay, we're agreeing to X retainer for Y months. And at the end of Y months, we're renegotiating. Like and then I can always point back to that initial contract or that initial email, which kind of leads back into Mickey's point here, which is how can you bring up salary if it is sort of this intimidating, like the I don't want to talk about money talks. I just feel like are always sort of like, oh, like people just kind of like go crazy. Is there like a right time? Again, for me, I always do that. I'm not in a corporate job and I know neither are you, but a lot of your clients are. I always do that sort of in the beginning or in the middle when a contract is completing. But if you're in a corporate position and you're interviewing, when would you kind of bring up the money and when you revisit the money conversations?
Okay, so if we're in the interview process now, there's lots of debate on this, but again, after me working in human resources, seeing this happen time and time again, I do believe that the latest you can possibly have the salary conversation, the better it is positioning the candidate for having the highest possible salary. The reason being is um, the farther you get in the interview process, the more they actually understand your value. So if I just like right at the top, said a salary that was like too high or something, they might say, okay, we have lots of other great candidates that we're interviewing right now. But if they get down to it's like me and another person, or even just me, people who are hiring are overworked because you only hire if you have more work than you have people. The hiring process, so you're overworked, then you're spending hours and hours a day reviewing resumes and interviewing. You want to get the heck out of interviewing as soon as humanly possible. So they have this dire need. They love you. They want to just close this as soon as possible. And so if you say a number that's higher, they're going to be like, okay, is it worth $10,000 for me to just have this person on the team to get this done, to stop this interview process? Yes, it definitely is. And so then they'll push it through. So there's a lot of other different dynamics there, but I think it's really to your advantage to have that conversation later.
And to echo your point, Madeline, I also think it's beneficial to have it later because I always tell people they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. So I don't care if their website says marketing manager doing these 5 bullet points, because as you start to have conversations with them, or maybe conversations with other people on the marketing team, you realize, okay, wait a second. You said you only wanted these 5 bullet points, but what I'm hearing is actually you want 8, 9, 10 bullet points. You also want me to do social media, and you also want me to do these e-newsletter blasts. And so I always say, you have to listen too, because when you originally thought, oh, it's a $70,000 job for these 5 bullet points, if the conversations start going on and you realize, wait, this is 9 bullet points, and that actually would be a $90,000 position, not a $70,000 position, you kind of have to have your listening ears or your sort of go-go gadget ears on for that as well, because you have to figure out what they need as well as what you need.
Yeah, I completely agree. Exactly. And I think that's really taking it to the non-emotional again of like, hey, so my understanding of the role is XYZ. What you said is XYZ, ABC. Like, let's revisit this. Like, let me fully understand, right? You're taking the emotional and making it non-emotional.
Exactly. And so I'm curious for you, do you find that there is a certain book or podcast or resource that you like to use as sort of a refresh before you have these sort of money conversations, or before you go into a yearly HR meeting, or before you go into a negotiation? Like, do you have a little, I don't know, I always think about like tune-ups for a car. Like,
Yeah.
the car is running, but you still kind of need some tune-ups. What are some tune-ups that you go to when it comes to money, salary negotiations?
Right. Well, so like that I recommend for others to go to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, so I would say I do have a playlist on my YouTube channel, Self-Made Millennial, that I think is called like Crucial Money Conversations in your career. It has like interview, it has, asking for a promotion, it has all these different aspects. And I think you're right. Like, I think you do need to rewatch that playlist annually, at least, maybe more than once, because you hear the tips we're saying now, you understand them intellectually, but when you get into the conversation, it's extremely emotional. You worry you're going to lose the offer, you're worried you're going to damage a relationship, and so you need to hear someone who is objective third party repeating these phrases to you. And that's why I do a lot of, like, with my clients in my group coaching program, I help them like negotiate their offers. Even if I just helped a VP of people negotiate his offer, he has just as much experience as I do being on that side, but it doesn't matter, because when you are the person it's your salary, it gets very cloudy.
Well, and I always tell people, we are never unbiased when it comes to ourselves. We always see ourselves through a glassy lens. I'll even give myself as an example. I create brands, and I create these amazing stories for other entrepreneurs, founders. But when it came to doing it for myself, whether it was building my website or even building my own LinkedIn profile, like, I had to get someone else.
Yes.
Even though I do that for other people, which it was funny because my fiance at the time, he's now my husband, was like, I don't understand why you're hiring somebody to help. Like, this is what you do. Like, people pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't see myself clearly. You need that sort of like third person. So it's such a good point that even the VP of human resources needs you, even though they negotiate and see salaries all day.
What I call it is, we're sitting in the bottle and we can't read the label.
Yeah.
So we are all so close to our story, and that's why my entire business exists. If we all could clearly see our value and our glory and like create this really great narrative about ourselves, we would. And the funny thing is that a lot of the people I work with are people who help their friends and families with their resumes. They are even marketing managers executives, leaders, they're sales leaders, they're sales managers. So they are selling and marketing other things. But when it comes to themselves, they are completely lost. And so it's not a reflection of your skill set. It's a reflection of you are way too close. And that's why you need an expert to read the label on the bottle.
Well, and I think something that you talk about a lot in podcasts that I've heard you on and just again your LinkedIn posts is you talk a lot about soul searching before job searching.
Yeah.
And I think that also kind of comes into part here that you really need to think about how do I want to be presented and kind of what is the story I want to tell, and then go find a Madeline, a Kim, a Jen, a Josh, a whoever to help you tell that story. So I'm curious, like, are you seeing a lot of people, again, whether you want to call it the great reshuffle or the great resignation? I feel like when we open up any newspaper or news outlet right now, this whole soul searching or kind of big jump movement has really become like, it was shocking and now it seems like it's like a daily norm. I was just talking to someone yesterday and they said 3 people from their internal team gave them 2 weeks notice. And I was like 3 people and I was shocked, a 50-person team, like 3 people. And she was kind of like, yeah, Kim, like that's the norm. Like that's been my life the last 3 years, the last 3 months. And I was like, wow. So I think people are doing a lot of this soul searching. And I'm curious for your business, have you seen a big jump in people kind of having these aha, I want to jump ship moments?
Yes, I would definitely say there's a lot more aha moments. Here's the issue. I'm not seeing increased clarity. So people will jump ship, and the worst thing I see from folks is they say, I know I need something different, but I don't know what it is. So there's multiple things they do. First thing they do is they think, well, I'll just get another degree. Let me just collect a degree, and let me hope that by the end of that degree, it is actually what I want. And
like
so
Easter
now
eggs. Like I'm just going to keep collecting
I'm just
them.
going to keep collecting them. And so many people I know and have hired, they just have their education section is just a cemetery of education that they never ended up pursuing. And so that education should be like the last step of like, okay, I know exactly what I want to do and all that. So the second thing people do is that they do what I call like hitchhiking. So they stick out their thumb, they say, okay, I don't know what my next step is, but I know it needs to be different. So I'm just going to start applying to a wide variety of roles. I'm going to stick out my thumb, and whatever company drives by and picks me up, that's my next career move. So I think there's an absolute epidemic of people saying, yes, I want to change, but having no idea as to how to figure out what that next step is. And this is actually something I used to, in my group coaching program, just focus on, hey, I'll help you with your resume, LinkedIn, interviews, bing, bang, bang, we'll get you the job. And then I realized most people, even if they kind of know what they want next, they don't have that clarity. And so I did build a system called a one-page career vision, inspired off of that book called like the one-page marketing plan. But it's like a very deep process of figuring out what you want next. And it's amazing that when you do that, it's some of the hardest work you'll do in your career and your job search. But once you do that and they're able to move on to the next stage, your whole career is this beautiful upward trajectory and this thing that you're excited about versus these like constant lateral moves and feeling like, what do I do next? And just feeling really lost.
Totally. Well, and I'll take a stab. I know Ani's asking, what are good resources for finding clarity on your next step? I would say, I know this is going to be like a little out there and probably a little woo-woo, but I will say it was helpful for me. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book called Big Magic. She also had a podcast that went along with it, which I believe is like 9 or 10 episodes called Big Magic. If you are feeling like I am stuck, I don't know what to do next, I don't know what inspires me, that's one I hear a lot. Like, what's giving me that spark? What's giving me those magical butterflies, excited feeling? I found that the book Big Magic, along with the accompanying podcast, was really helpful. But Madeline, I'm curious how you would answer Ani's question about that.
Yeah, I would say Like I said, it is one of the hardest things you'll do in your career and your job search. Like it'll take months and it'll be hard work, and you really need to dedicate yourself to this. So it's not like some online quiz you're going to take and be like, I know what I'm going to be next. I do have a free 5-day class happening next week. Day one is fully dedicated to this topic of zeroing in on your next career leap. What are you going to do next? So I definitely invite you to come to that. That definitely come to day one, and then you'll see also the rest of it all builds on itself. But I will actually give you a formula that I use to help people to start this process. So that can really help you to get clear.
I love that. Okay. We have reached my favorite part of our conversation, which is like the caffeine filled speed round questions. So, are you ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay. I love it. What is something that you have been using or doing lately that you absolutely love? It could be like a product you bought recently or an app that you've been downloading and telling everybody about, but basically that thing that when you go to brunch with your friends, you're like, oh my God, have you guys seen or tried blank?
So I've been getting into breath work. I'm not that good at meditating because my mind is just moving a mile a minute. So to have breath work to really get in control, to calm down, to recenter, it's a more active way of like really kind of recentering myself. So I've been all about it lately.
I love that. Do you have like a specific app that you've been using or book that you've been following?
Yeah, so I am currently using the app. It's called Breath Work, but
Oh,
without an O. So it's like breath work.
work. Okay.
Yeah.
No O in there, people.
Yes. No O.
I love it. What is something that in 2022 you are really hoping to learn? It could be something that has to do with your profession, like, learning more negotiation tips, or it could be learning something that has nothing to do with work, like learning French or Spanish.
Yeah, so I would say I want to learn more about leadership. I have led teams in companies, but leading a company is much different. And I've invested a lot in a coach to really help me build that. But leadership is so complex and such like it's a lot about kind of similar to a lot of things we're talking about today. Is like you could tell me your best leadership tips all day, but I need to live them and experience them. And I think that is a journey I'm going through right now.
That's a huge one and also a never ending one. It's a never ending journey, or you can never get off the bus.
Yes.
Um, I feel like I'm always looking for interesting people or brands to kind of learn from in the sea of opening up social media or the news these days and just being flooded with like negativity or clickbait or things that are just really jarring. I'm always looking for people and brands that just sort of light you up and give you something to smile about and give you something to learn from. So I'm curious what accounts, it could be on LinkedIn or it could be on Instagram or other social media platforms, but what are some accounts or brands that you follow that you just feel like every time they come in your feed, you're like, like I really like that one.
Yeah, I would say I love on YouTube Charisma on Command. They have such good stuff. I would say Charisma on Command, I know Vanessa Van Edwards, like I think all of you all are very similar in that very specific and actionable. That is something I look for is like, let's not like talk in kind of fuzzy stuff, like actionable. Really like knows your stuff, right? Like very specific examples. And then also, like you said before, uh, like kind of this joy about life, like kind of this excitement and like making all of these things that we're talking about are super fun and interesting because they're all about growth. They're all about getting to the next level. Charisma on Command, they kind of take like pop culture and break down why your favorite stars are charismatic and like what specifically they do. So just stuff like that. I just find it super fun and I just love to grow my knowledge. And so anyone who's willing to share that and also share it in a way that kind of gets other people rallied around it and excited is just it makes all the difference.
No, it makes a huge difference. I love that. I'm curious, is there a podcast or newsletter or something that you listen or read on the regular? And why I say on the regular is I'm not sure if you're like me, but sometimes I get into little bursts we're like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with everything, you know, Lewis Howes or something, and I'll consume everything. But then after like 3 months, I'm kind of like, meh, my Lewis Howes phase is over. But I do have some like brands and newsletters and podcasts that just they sort of keep going. It's not just a fad. It's a marriage. It's a long-term commitment. So I'm curious for you if there is a podcast or a newsletter or something that you just feel like really like has stood the test of time for you.
Yeah, I would say someone who is just extremely generous with her knowledge and just done really well. I would say it's like Amy Porterfield. She her man, is it online marketing or something like
Online
that?
marketing made easy.
Online marketing made easy. It's just quality every time I listen. Like and what I love about her is like she really comes prepared. Like I personally love solo podcasts because the people who do solo podcasts are like, I'm going to prepare the crap out of this. I'm going to bring pure value. And of course she brings on guests as well. But I think that she just does a great job of being transparent and also like again, like bringing that joy to the work. You can tell she really enjoys it and bringing a lot of value.
I love that. Okay. If we love homework around here, if you haven't noticed, which is why we're always asking for like podcast recommendations and things to do. But if you can give us all homework for the week, and I will shamelessly plug your homework, which I think everyone should join your masterclass. And I know we're going to drop the link in the chat because it's totally free and it's going to be super fun. But if you could give us all homework this week, it could be to, again, listen to a certain podcast or do a certain thing or reach out to a certain someone. What would be the homework assignment that you would give all of us?
I would say, I mean, the energy during this live was amazing. Folks in the chat have been phenomenal, and I want to carry that through the rest of the week. So my homework to everyone is I want you to leave 5 meaningful, thoughtful comments on posts you see in your LinkedIn feed. When I say thoughtful, I mean instead of saying great job, that sounds cool, which is still nice. Like people still appreciate that. You should still do that if you're like in a time crunch. But saying something like, yes, like I can really relate to your story because of this. And like one thing I would add is that, and you will notice that not only will the poster definitely notice you, but you also, that's like a way to start building relationships. And also you'll just start to see your LinkedIn profile will just get a few more views or a few more, like it'll start to liven up because you are building relationships and conversations with folks. It's an amazing habit to start building.
No, I love that habit. I'm obsessed with that habit. I do that habit. Everyone should do that habit. So it's so good. And Madeline, where do you spend the most time? If people want to connect with you, they should not go to your LinkedIn DMs, which we learned. But where should people kind of connect, follow? Where are you putting out content? How can people stay connected to you?
Okay, so yes, definitely follow on LinkedIn. I post things 5 days a week. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. I put out some really in-depth content on there. And also just there's so many free resources on the front of my website, madelinemann.com. Grab these like tell me about yourself script that you're going to need every single time someone asks you about yourself. Grab these follow-up email templates. Go to this live free 5-day session I'm doing next week. Like those things will like have tangibly, there's a reason why I only have a few resources on my website because those are the ones that get the big results. So just take advantage of all of them.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for dealing with our technical difficulties, which I can't wait to email StreamYard as soon as I hang up from this. But thank you so much. And I just wanted to say again, like you are an absolute delight. And I'm so glad we're connected and just thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. We will be right back here next Wednesday, same time, same place. You can always go to getcoffeewithkim.com to sign up to have this added to your calendar. But thank you again so much, Madeline. And thank you to everybody for joining.
Cheers.
Cheers.